Hey Chi-Fis, it's Scott Benton here. How are you? Today is Sunday, March 26, 2023, and I just wanted to do a quick update. I'm still trying to figure out this camera equipment, and I'm dealing with a little bit of wind today, so hopefully, I think I have this mic shielded a little bit that I'm wearing, but I'm still trying to kind of figure out this whole rig. And I did order some new microphones so that so I can do interviews a little easier. I posted on the Kingdom Facebook page an interview I did with Richard Robinson, or Bosto as he's known, or was known in the house, still known if you know him from the house. I shot that interview a week ago, last Sunday, and posted it. It took me a little while to edit that, but I posted that late Sunday night, early Monday morning. And if you notice, there's some sound problems with it because I was using the mic I'm wearing right now, and it was not the ideal solution. My voice was a little too hot, and Bosto's voice was a little too cold, so the microphones that I ordered should take care of that. In theory, we'll see. I don't know about this DJI camera stuff. Some of the tests I saw, the sound was a little muffled, but I don't know. It might be a good solution. I did see, Rob Klusman, Carlos von Mecklenburg, and Richie Cole, and Richie's wife, Rich's wife and daughter in Los Angeles on Thursday, and I talked to Richie. We've talked about doing a couple of interviews. I'm probably going to try and interview him next. Richie Cole, if you've seen the Why Chi-Fi video, he's the guy in the middle with the long blonde hair. He wrote the lyrics to that thing, to that piece of music, and so I want to interview him next, and I want to kind of interview Richie about his sort of adventures after college, which I think are pretty interesting from what I've heard. I actually don't know a lot about that story. I'm mostly going to go into that interview with him cold, but if you have any questions you'd like me to ask him, go ahead and get in touch with me and let me know what those questions are. He's a pretty interesting guy. And also, if there's anybody who wants to do an interview, let me know. I'm pretty eager to use this camera setup and to do more interviews. I'll pretty much interview anybody about anything. Just let me know what you'd like to talk about and we'll go for it. Yeah, just get in touch with me. So I am using a wide angle lens. I'm also going to try and slow down my pace and see how that goes. But I'm using a wide angle lens right now, an attachment. The cool thing about this DJI camera is that you can get different lenses. They have different neutral density lenses and this wide angle lens. This might be a better solution. You can see a little bit more of, I can't quite figure this whole thing out. You can kind of see the background a little bit more. I'm on this bike path that people keep riding by on. Down here in the Huntington Beach, there are a lot of these electric bikes, and they're pretty cool. I don't think you get any exercise on the electric bikes. I did go and rent one for a couple of days, and I thought they were pretty cool. They're cool. You can get really far on an electric bike just on the single charge. I can see their appeal. They're pretty fun to buzz around on. They're also expensive. The ones that I was looking at, and I think these are the most expensive ones, were about $4,000 for an electric bike. Now you can get them for cheaper than that, and you can get them used, of course, but at the electric bike company, I think you can go to their website. The bike that I was interested in anyway, which wasn't fancy, but it had the nicer, more long distance battery or whatever, I don't even know, was about $4,000 all in. So you'll see people just screaming by on those electric bikes all the time on this bike path that I'm on. I'm off to the side. I'm not on the road because, as you saw in the last video, people get kind of cranky. Someone just texted me. I actually have my phone hooked up to this thing now, so I can look at that screen as opposed to trying to look at the little screen on the DJI camera, which is hard to see. I can also tell that I'm recording on my phone, and I can see the microphone level, which is helpful. I can't really, it's sort of hard to maneuver the camera. Maybe I can, hold on a sec, let's see if we can. Yeah, okay, there you go. That's what it looks like. You can see the phone and the little selfie stick thing or whatever. It's a really nice camera setup. I still got to kind of get the angle correct. I do like this flip feature. I can flip the thing around, the little gimbal. You can see the road I'm on and flip it back to me. So, on the last video, I talked about wanting to raise some money for the alumni events, which I'm still doing. And if you're interested in contributing to that, please get in touch with me, and I'll tell you how to get some funds over to me, probably in the form of a check, I would imagine. Before I start to schedule an event, I want to hit the $3,000 mark. I'm not sure when that's going to take place. I'm going to kind of wait till I hit that number before I go over to Rock and Brews and start talking to them about putting together an alumni event. Currently, I think I have in donations about $2,000. I don't have it in hand. As I told you on the last video, I'm going to open up an account and put the money in the account, which I'll just show you what I've got on these videos once I kind of figure out how to record that piece and drop it in. I'm going to have to learn a little bit more about editing on iMovie. iMovie's very cool, by the way, if you don't know it. And I'm going to then collect the money that's already been pledged. You saw, if you're looking at the Kingdom Facebook page, you saw that Greg Sarandi, who is our to date our largest financial donor to the everything that we've done at Eta Delta Chi Phi. Greg Sarandi's been incredibly generous. Thank you, Greg. He has already pledged $1,000. I need to kind of give him my new address and tell him where to send that, but that's once again, very generous of Greg. And when I hit that $3,000 mark, then I'll move this whole project forward. So if you'd like to help sponsor that event, whatever amount you want to sponsor, please get in touch with me. Find a way to get me, and I'll send you my address, as I said. What else do I want to talk about? There are some other things. I should probably write down an outline because I'm kind of just, it's really windy right now. I don't know if you can hear that. I'm sure the mic is picking up that wind. It's very bright out here. What time is it? If I can see my watch. It's 5:45 p.m. on Sunday. It's really nice because we set the clocks, I don't know, backwards or forwards. I don't know. It's lighter, longer right now. It's still very cold. We're about 56 degrees right now, so I'm a bit chilly and glad I'm walking. But I wanted to get this video out to you today if possible. I saw that Tom Vo put the information on the Kingdom page for the reunion, which is coming up on April 8th. So mark your calendars if you're planning to go to that. I think there's an RSVP that they want you to, oh, here come some electric bikes now doing cool tricks. Let me see if I can flip that. There we go. Hey man.
You vlogging?
Yeah. You got a message for the world?
Are you live?
No, I'm not live. Do you want to say something?
How many followers do you have?
About 400.
Oh, what's good, guys?
Yeah. What are you guys doing?
Wheeling our bikes.
Do you live that way or this way?
On Earth.
Both. Okay, on Earth. Nice. I like that answer.
Yeah. I live here.
Cool. Do you have anything to tell my audience? Anything at all? It's about 400 people.
Follow Postnut on Instagram.
Follow who?
Postnut.
What is that?
Postnut. POSTNUTT.
Okay. I'm afraid to ask, but
That's his last name.
okay, right. Tell me about these electric bikes.
They're pieces of shit. They're pretty slow.
Are they? You guys seem to be going pretty fast and doing tricks on them, though.
They suck. They break all the time.
Oh, okay.
Get a Harley.
Get a Harley. Now, what about, there's the electric bike company over here.
It's terrible.
They're bad bikes, too?
They're expensive
They're like $4,000 bucks.
for a shitty bike.
More like
Yeah,
10.
yeah. How much were these? How much were these
This
bikes?
was almost 20 grand.
No, come on, get out of here.
Joking. No, it's like $800 to build.
So you built this?
Yeah.
Okay,
So there's like a company where like you can't get them pre-built, but you can get them like custom built. So
okay.
just buy all the parts.
And what's the range on these bikes? How far do they go?
About 4 miles.
That's it?
Yeah. Like we live
For
right
real?
here, so we just drive down the river. Back
All right, good luck.
Wait, here.
Nice. There you go. See, everyone's so nice around here. He peeled out on my shoes, which is great. And I think we got some pretty inaccurate information from that group. But that's life in Huntington Beach. It's a pretty rowdy group. I'm not sure what I was saying. There were some things I was going to talk about. You know, I'm actually putting together or probably will put together a talk that I'm going to do on a financial talk. And if you know me from the house, if you know me from the last 8 years at the house, if you've been in the house for that long, you probably heard me talk a little bit about this. At the end of the day, there wasn't a lot of interest in a financial chat that I wanted to develop and get into. But I thought, I don't know, I'm going to put together a talk, something that I'm probably going to deliver this summer. And so I thought I'd kind of try it out here a little bit. And it's just about wealth building. This is so completely unstructured that you might want to just turn this off now. So I'm warning you. But I figure that if some of this advice can make you wealthy or put you on the path to wealth, maybe some of that will come back towards, I don't know, either the fraternity if you want to give them money, or contribute to what I'm doing in terms of putting together events for the alumni, or both. Maybe you have enough that you want to give a little bit to both parties. Maybe go to the reunion if you want to do that, and donate some funds to them, since I think I think part of it is a fundraising drive. I don't really know, and I'm not sure really where to start with this. Part of this is just going to be brainstorming for the talk that I want to put together and deliver, probably in July. And yeah, but first let's take a look at the water treatment plant that I'm walking by. I'm in Huntington Beach, and this is a very industrial area. At first I thought there was some kind of oil processing that went on, but this is actually a water treatment plant that you see. I would zoom in, but I'm on this wide angle lens, and I hope you can see most of that. There's a bit of an odor going on right now. I can't tell if that's from the water treatment plant or from the whatever this, here, see that? Whatever all this is from all the rain that we've had and all the snow up in the mountains. You can just barely see the mountains now. You probably can't see it on camera, but I can kind of see the mountains, and they're still snow-capped. So Where do you want to start? I think this is going to be a bit clunky getting into, but hopefully I'll get on a roll. I want to get you all the way to the beach today, and probably why I'm walking kind of fast. The wide angle lens should kind of cut down on the bumpiness of this shot. That's a bit kind of right about there. Might be able to extend this a little bit. That's a little, oh, this is, no, that was better before. I can't tell. Okay, wealth building. Let's talk about wealth building for a minute. Now, you may or may not know that the American school system teaches you nothing about money. Nothing. That's on purpose, by the way. They market to students, so like the colleges, for instance, will market to students that if you have a college degree, you'll make infinitely much more money if you have some college or graduate, especially if you graduate. And if you get a master's degree, apparently, according to this marketing campaign that the schools have been pushing for decades, if you have a master's degree, you're going to make even more money than if you had a bachelor's degree only. And they tell us, if you get a PhD, well, you're going to be a multimillionaire or something like that. I don't even know. What is that stupid graph they keep pushing on high school kids to convince them to go to college and get into severe, student loan debt that can never be discharged in a bankruptcy. See, before they passed that law, what people would do is they would go to school forever and they'd get all these student loans, and then after they graduated, they'd declare bankruptcy, and those would get thrown out along with all their other debts that they couldn't then, they had a bad credit score for 10 years, but they figured it was better than paying whatever it was, hundreds of thousands of dollars for their school loans. So schools tell you that you'll make a lot of money if you go to school. Why? Because they make a lot of money on you going to school. And is that true? Is that a real statistic? Do you really make more money the more school and degrees that you have? Well, I don't know, maybe. But then what about all those guys that dropped out of school and they became like the Zuckerbergs, and you know the stories. You know all those guys, the Fords and the Disneys and the who else dropped out? The what's his name? The Microsoft guy. I don't even want to say his name. I hate him so much. So that's your financial plan. Go to school, make a lot of money, make a lot of wealth. But when you get to school, strangely, they don't teach you the first thing about money. Nothing. No matter how high you go up. If you get a PhD in finance, there's really nothing about money they're teaching you. Not personal finance, not how to build your own wealth. I mean, maybe you can figure that out on your own. In fact, you're supposed to figure that out on your own. You're supposed to do what most people don't do, which is get a financial education. And that's something you have to go after yourself. But most people don't, and most people figure that, well, I'm smart because I got a degree from college, from a university. Sometimes it's even kind of like an Ivy League thing, or it's a, okay, now you can see all the industrial stuff, or it's a really pricey, expensive school. But guess what? You still don't learn anything about money. And if you're going to get a financial education, it's pretty much something you have to do on your own. And that's different. It's different than sitting in a classroom and essentially having education done to you. You actually have to educate yourself. You have to be both the teacher and the student, so to speak, although that's even a bad analogy. A lot of people, I notice, think that getting a big giant pile of money is what wealth building is all about. that can be true, but you still have to do something with that money, right? So if you look at a financial statement, you'll notice that there are 4 columns. There's the income column, the expense column, the asset column, and the liability column. Now, most people that don't really study money, don't have a financial education, so to speak, focus entirely on the income column. That's it. And they do that their whole lives. And it's just about making more and more and more money. And that's it. And maybe at the end of their working career, they have a big pile of money. Maybe they have 401k money. Maybe they have pension money, the old-fashioned kind, before ERISA was passed in 1974. But nonetheless, they have a big pile of money. So what do you do with that big pile of money? Well, you spend it, and when it runs out, you no longer have a big pile of money. Generally, if you, and that's what 401k is, by the way, and IRAs and all that sort of stuff. That's what that is. That's what I call time bomb money, because once you run out of that big pile of money, then boom, you're bust. And it just blows up in your face. However, what if there was something on that financial statement that you could focus on that was infinitely better than just focusing on the income column? Because in the income column, you can do a couple of things. You can increase your income, you can reduce your expenses if you want, if you can't. And most people don't want to, and most people can't. And their expenses grow and grow and grow over time. They also expand as they have more money coming in. So no matter how much you make, there's a couple problems there. Your expenses go up, and also the government gets more and more of your money because you enter into higher tax brackets. So if you get a raise, let's say you change jobs and you have a lot more money coming in, you at the same time have a lot more money going out, simply in the form of taxes. And I'll talk about taxes in a second. But what if you never got a raise or changed jobs and made more money? Then what? Well, as we've seen recently with all of the inflation we've gone through, and now we're having all these banking meltdowns, which, depending on who you believe, are either going to affect several other banks, or well, anyway, that's a longer conversation. Let's not go down that rabbit hole yet. Anyway, if you're looking at your financial statement and you're looking at income, expenses, assets, and liabilities, let's take a quick look at the other columns. If you stop and force yourself, stop looking at the income column only and look at the other columns, again, as I mentioned, you can do things like reduce your expenses. That helps, because now you're keeping more of your income. You have less of it going out of the expense column. But there's still another problem. At the end of the day, let's say you've worked your whole life and you've just focused on the income column. You still have no assets. You have nothing in the asset column. Now, what's an asset? Well, an asset is something that makes money for you whether or not you work, which is what you really need to be focused on. So the question on the financial statement is not so much how much money I can make, but how many assets can I build in the asset column. So what you want to do, I think I'm going to make it to the beach, probably because I'm talking about this financial subject, and I'm sure I've already lost a lot of you as I'm trying to stumble through this explanation. Believe me, I'm going to get this a little bit more narrowed down. But you need to focus on building assets as quickly as possible. The whole secret to wealth building is converting your income into assets as quickly as possible. I'm going to switch gears for just a second. And we're going to talk about the 3 forms of income which are, my watch keeps going off. I don't know what it's trying to tell me. Oh, it wants to record this walk. I'm starting to really hate the Apple Watch. So there's 3 forms of money. And what are those 3 forms of money? Well, here they are. There's W-2 income. There's 3 forms of income, I should say. There's W-2 income, there's portfolio income, and there's passive income. There's 3 of them. There's 3 buckets of income. You get to choose which bucket you want your money to come from. If you don't know, then you'll always choose bucket number 1, which is the W-2 income. And that is by far the worst form of income. Why is it the worst form of income? Well, W-2 income is the money that you get from a job. You put in a week or 2 of work, depending on the pay period. Sometimes it's every month. I've been in those jobs where you get paid once a month, but let's say it's every week. You put in a week's worth of work, and then the next week you get a paycheck for that week. And that's W-2 income. That is by far the worst kind of money of the 3 that you can work for. Why? Because it's taxed the heaviest. For the sake of this conversation, we're going to call it 50% money. If you're just a W-2 worker, it's generally 40% of it goes straight to the government. If you are self-employed, in other words, like you have your own shop or something, it's 60%. So for the sake of this conversation, we're just going to call it 50% money. So you get a paycheck and 50% of it is lopped off the top. So you'll have that paycheck. So let's say it's $1,000. Let's say you get paid $1,000, just for ease of illustrating this point. So you get your paycheck and it's $1,000 gross. 50% of that is immediately, it's the first line item. It's lopped off and it's given to the government in the form of taxes. And you get the remainder. And that's what ends up in your account. So you have the purchasing power of $500, even though you made $1,000. Okay, so that's bucket number 1. Let's look at bucket number 2. Bucket number 2 is called portfolio income. And that's money that you make in your brokerage account. Generally, it's your brokerage account. So you'll exchange your money for stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, and other financial vehicles that I can't think of. And those financial vehicles, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, blah, 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 are going to throw off dividends, or they'll have yields or whatever. They make money for you at a certain percentage. That money, at the end of the year, you have to declare, and that's taxed at a much lower rate. So whereas W-2 money is taxed at 50%, portfolio income is taxed at, let's call it 20%. It's more like 15 to 22, but let's just call it 20%. So that's a lot better. That's a lot better. So one thing you can do is convert as much money as you can from your paycheck into your portfolio. If only for the tax savings. You're now saving, you're now, instead of paying 50% of your money to the government, you're paying 20% of your money to the government. That's just a better deal. So in bucket 1 and bucket 2, if you get $1,000 from those, bucket 1, which is the W-2 money, is worth $500. Bucket 2, which is 20% money, meaning 20% of it goes to the government, is you get the same $1,000, you get the purchasing power. Instead of $500 like you do with W-2, you get $800. I want to make sure I don't get hit by a bike here. This is going to be a little tricky. Let's see. What does the sign say? Bikeway subject to flooding and may become impassable. Caution, blind curve trail users must exercise extreme caution. I think that's me. I think I'm the trail user. All right, so I'm going to be watching out for bikes going by here. I'm going to walk on the corner as much as I can. All right, so bucket 1, you get $1,000. That you have the purchasing power of $500 because it's 50% money. Half of it goes to the government. Bucket 2 is 20% money, so you have the purchasing power, same $1,000, you have the purchasing power of, what, $800, because 20% of it goes to the government. But then there's bucket number 3. I'm going under the PCH right now. So bucket number 3, what is bucket number 3? Bucket number 3 is passive income. And what is passive income? Passive income is money that you get. There's birds that live down here. Passive income is money that you get from things like rental properties, book royalties maybe. If you've written like an online program and people come and they pay for your online program, that's passive income. And that is typically referred to as 0% money. That is, you don't pay taxes on that money. Well, you pay taxes. I know you guys are going to get real granular with me on this, but just stick with me for the sake of this conversation. I'm going to try and make it out to the ocean here. I don't know if this wind is making this conversation impossible or not, but I have a feeling it is. I'm going to see if I can... Oh, I don't think I can... Nope, I think I got to keep walking. Let's see if I can show you where I am. I'm trying to do this during the sunset here. The sun is going to go down. I don't know when. I wonder what time the sunset is. So you might be getting a lot of wind interference right now. All right, so we've made it to bucket number 3. Bucket number 3 is passive income. And that's 0% money. So essentially, if you get $1,000 from bucket 1, which is your W-2 bucket, that has the purchasing power of $500. If you get $1,000 from your portfolio bucket, that has the purchasing power of $800. Maybe a little less, depending on what your tax rate is. If you get $1,000 from the bucket number 3, which is the passive income bucket, that's worth, you got the purchasing power of $1,000. So you get to choose. Which bucket do you want your money to come from? If you don't choose, chances are all of your money is going to come from the worst bucket, which is bucket number 1, from your W-2, from your job. And you're basically going to be paying out half of all of the money you earn in the form of taxes to the government. And you can do that. That's your choice. Just make sure that you know that you're making that choice. Yeah, in theory, if you're trying to get rich, or if you're trying to build wealth, or if you're trying to achieve freedom, where all of your expenses are paid for without you having to work, in other words, you've replaced yourself, then it is almost nearly impossible to do it with bucket number 1. It's nearly impossible, if not completely impossible. So if your goal is just to go to work, make a little money, have them take it out of your 401k, take it out of your paycheck and put it in your 401k or IRA, whatever they have, then great. You don't have to do anything else. Just follow the programming. Do what Wall Street tells you to do what your employer tells you to do. Just know that all of the money that you make that half of it's going to be going to the government. If you want to step it up a little, you can get a brokerage account where that's another account. It's like a bank account if you don't know. It's like a bank account, so like a Schwab account or Ameritrade or I can't remember what they all are, Fidelity, these places. Vanguard, and tons of others. And you can transfer your money over to your brokerage account, and there you can buy stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, and all that nonsense. Okay, I'm at the ocean. I'm trying to figure out how to get to the water. I think I'd need to walk a little further so I can get out on the sand, but this may be a mess because it's pretty windy out here. This video may be completely unusable because of the wind right now, but I'm going to keep going anyway. And if I have to redo this video, I will. I'll probably talk about this same subject over and over again, and you can see that this is going on forever. So I'm going to have to come up with a shorter version. I may actually turn around shortly because I don't think I'm going to be able to deal with the wind. So if you have a choice between taking money from one of three buckets, and now you know you have a choice, the question kind of becomes, do you want to give half your money to the government, or a smaller percent, 20% typically, a little more sometimes, to the government, or none of it to the government? And you get to decide that. I would, oh yeah, this is going to be really sandy. This is a mess. Let me turn this around. I don't know if you can see that, but all that haze is sand floating around because of the wind. You can probably see the sun. I'm kind of on a bike path right next to the PCH. I wish I knew this area a little bit better, just all the landmarks that I'm walking by, but I don't. Excuse me. So, all right, so you can choose which bucket you want your money to come from, or which buckets. You could have, for instance, money coming from all three buckets. You just need to know that there are three of them. See, I can see this is picking up a lot of wind. I can see the sound. The sound indicator, the sound level indicator, makes it look like I'm picking up a lot of wind. I'm going to walk down to the end of this path here, and then I'm going to turn around and head back. Can you see that? I don't know if you can see that, but there's just sand coming in everywhere. I'll stand still. Yeah, it's all over the place. Wow, this is crazy. So here's the whole secret to building wealth. You want to convert W-2 income into passive income as quickly as possible. That's it. That's the whole secret. That's the whole thing. Now, inside of that, you need to learn how to build assets. You need to know what that means. In other words, if you're going to buy rental properties, which are assets if they're making money, they're not assets if they're losing money. Definition of an asset is something that puts money in your pocket. Definition of a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. So you definitely need to buy something that puts money in your pocket. And let's just say that's rental property that comes with a positive cash flow. You now have an asset that's putting money in your pocket every month. So let's just talk about tax laws real quick. Why is it that bucket number 3, passive income, how come you don't pay any taxes? Well, because you're using a different form of taxes. Anytime you have a business, you get to use the corporate tax laws. Now, you're going to say, well, I don't want to open up a corporation, or do I have to open up a corporation? You actually don't. You can, a lot of people do, but you don't have to. But you need to know that there are two forms of taxes. There are two tax codes, actually. There's people running behind me. There are two tax codes that you need to know about. Oh, this is kind of nice here, actually. Should I keep going? All right, I'll go a little bit further and then turn around. Actually, yeah, I'll go a little further and then turn around. So you need to know that there are two tax codes. There's W-2 tax code, and there's corporate tax code. And you need to figure out how to use the corporate tax code. W-2 taxes will, if that's all you're using, and most people think there's only one tax code, they don't realize there's two. And if you don't know that, then chances are you're just using the W-2 tax code, which really doesn't give you any leverage at all, none, almost nothing. You can get some tax advantages by putting money like in a retirement account, stupid stuff like that. The other problem with W-2 tax law is that taxes are the first line item. So like I said, you get $1,000 that comes in, And the first line item is taxes, so 40 to 60%, or for this conversation, 50% gets lopped off the top and given to the government, and you get what's left over. That's W-2 tax law. However, corporate tax law is exactly the opposite of that. So let's say you get $1,000 and you're using corporate tax law. In corporate tax law, taxes are the last line item. So that means you get the $1,000 in and you get to spend. You get the whole $1,000 and you spend as much of it as you possibly can. Spend. And whatever's left over is what you get taxed on. You see, it's the last line item. So it gives you much greater flexibility. And this is all legal, by the way. This is not, there's nothing, this is right there in the tax code. It's just the difference between W-2 tax law and corporate tax law. So with corporate tax law, so the question is, well, how do I use the corporate tax laws? I would rather use the corporate tax laws. Yeah, me too. Because you keep more of your money that way. So you have to figure out how to access the corporate tax law. And it goes back to the 3 buckets of money. If you're taking money out of the first bucket, the W-2 tax bucket, you can only use the W-2 tax law in that bucket. So you can't access the better tax code. If you are taking money out of the second bucket, which is the portfolio bucket, I'm not really clear about this, but you're still not really able to access the corporate tax code. You're paying taxes on the gains, the 20% or whatever it is. But the one bucket, oh, it smells like someone's burning something out here, like a barbecue or something. I don't see anything. Maybe it's in that trailer. Let me flip you around. There's like trailers and stuff out here. Look at that. That's incredible. The ocean's over there somewhere. It's hard to see right now. There's still a lot of sand falling out there. I'm going to turn around. I am at Brookhurst. I'm at the end of Brookhurst right now. Which is, let's see if I can, nope, wrong direction. It's going to be hard for you to see with the, here, let me flip it. That is Brookhurst, which is going to be hard to see with the wide angle. I'm getting sand in my throat. All right, so the corporate tax laws are accessed through the third bucket, the passive income bucket. You make passive income when you buy properties, when you have businesses. It's like side businesses, that type of stuff. So like making online programs, lots of it. There's a ton of ways to create business that will access the corporate tax laws. With the corporate tax laws, again, you get to write everything off. I mean, you just have so much more flexibility. And since the tax line item favors you because it's the last line item, not the first, then you get to spend as hard as you can and pay taxes on what's left over. So just, you can spend everything if you want to and then pay no taxes. If they're, qualified expenses, then now you're paying 0 taxes on that money. So that's kind of the secret. You want to convert W-2 income into passive income as quickly as possible, and you want to be able to find ways to use the corporate tax laws. Simply because the difference between W-2 tax law and corporate tax law is where the tax line item is. W-2 tax law, the line item is first. They take it off the top. They don't even ask you about it. They just, nope, here, give me my money. Goes to taxes, goes to the government. Corporate tax law, it's exactly the opposite. It's the last line item. Spend. Take all the deductions you can, and you pay taxes on what's left over. So if you started with $1,000, but you are left with, after all that spending on qualified expenses, then you have $100 left over. You're paying taxes on the $100, not the $1,000. So that's generally what you want to focus on. Now going back to the financial statement, where we have the 4 columns, income, expenses, assets, and liabilities, most people are focused on the income column. How much money can I make? I want to make the most amount of money that I can. But see, the problem with that is they're making W-2 money, and that's the worst kind of money you can make because half of it's going away. It doesn't even hit your account. It just goes away before it hits your account. But if you're focused on the income column, then that's the only choice you have. And you're using the W-2 tax code, which gives you no incentives, no leverage, no advantages, nothing. Just half your money goes away. But if you convert that over into bucket 3 or passive income or buy assets, now you have something in your asset column that's generating money for you. It's cash flow positive. Let's say it's rental real estate. Now you've focused your energy not on the income column, but on the asset column and building the asset column. And eventually, if you have enough money coming in from that asset column, and that money, which is tax advantage money, you get to use the corporate tax code where taxes are the last line item, so spend as hard as you can. Then once you've exceeded your expenses, you have enough passive income that's 0% money. You're not paying taxes on it because of the tax laws and the advantages that you get from using the corporate tax law, whether you have a corporation or not. I know that gets confusing. Then you're free because you focused on your asset column and not your income column. And that's why you get people who occasionally hear about people that have jobs that don't pay a whole lot and they still amass an enormous amount of wealth. So it turns out there's a big difference between having a lot of money and having a lot of wealth, or just having wealth. And that's the piece they don't teach you in school, and they never will. And there's a reason for that. That's actually taken out of the curriculum on purpose. Why would they want you to be free? But you can do it. And you can do it without a lot of money. You might think, well, I can't get a bunch of houses, as an example. I'm just using houses as an example. You can do it with other things too. I can't get a bunch of houses. Yeah, you can. How do you know that? Well, my friends told me so. Well, they don't know. They don't know. What you got to do is get a financial education and start studying this stuff. And they're going to push a lot of financial products on you, like stocks, bonds, and blah, 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 and retirement accounts. And here's the thing about money. It's really easy. It's not hard. But the financial industry, and sorry if you work in the financial industry, and if you do, you probably know this, they try to make it as hard and confusing and difficult as they possibly can so that you won't try to learn it and that you will rely on the services of your financial advisor or your 401k administrator or whatever, whoever those Wall Street people are. And their whole plan for you is make a lot of money. That's what they want. But they don't teach you about build an asset base. I've never heard any 401k administrator or financial advisor talk about that. They sure want to sell you a bunch of financial products that they make commissions on, that they benefit from. If it's AUM, assets under management, they want you to have a lot of money because they make a lot of money. But it's all W-2 money. It's not, or portfolio income, but it's not generally passive income. They're not going to tell you that. They're not going to help you build that in most cases. maybe you have a family member that's figured all this out and they've taught this to you, but again, that's a form of financial education. And if you're not fortunate enough to have that family member who's going to teach this to you, then you got to do it on your own. And you have to build an asset base and stop focusing on your income column. Oh, I'm going to make this much money, but who cares? You're going to spend all that money. If you don't have a plan of what you're going to do with that pile of money, you might as well not have a pile of money. It's a waste. But if you convert that into assets that are generating income for you, and you replace yourself, I'm trying to get the ocean in here. There, it's a little better. Then you're going to set yourself free. Now, here's the thing. Here's another thing that not a lot of people talk about. Occasionally you'll find this in books, but there's a big difference between rich and free. There's a big difference. And they have their own definitions. If you're going to go after rich, Godspeed, go for it. If I can help you get there, great. I'd love to help you get rich. But there's a step before that that's arguably even more valuable, and that's called free, getting free. There are actually people that have figured out that if you've gotten in touch with the FIRE movement, this is another sort of subgroup. FIRE stands for Financially Independent Retire Early. So they've basically obliterated the idea of retirement, which is 9 to 5 until you die, or work until you're 65, and then and suddenly magically you have a big pile of money that you can, according to the marketing, live on the beach with your significant other and enjoy wine every night at sunset and go on cruises every other month. The truth is, in America, in this country, that upon completion of an entire lifetime of hard work, that 90% of Americans have nothing to show for it. Nothing. So there isn't this magical pile of money that shows up at the end of your working lifetime, and you're not going to live on the beach. I mean, some of you will, but most of you won't. And you're not going to go on a cruise every other month. Because it's 90%. 90% of Americans have nothing to show after a lifetime of hard work. So they're either being taken care of by family members, or they've got a little bit of Social Security coming in. They might have some pension or 401k money. 401k is a pension. It's just a different kind of pension. It's not the old-fashioned kind. There's something called defined benefit, which is you work for a company for 40 years and then they pay you out a certain amount of money for the rest of your life. And then in 1974, with the passage of ERISA, that changed and became the 401k, which is called defined contribution. So no longer is it up to a company to take care of you in your retirement. It's up to you. And most people don't have a whole lot in their 401k. There are 401k millionaires, it's true. There are a few of those. But even if you have $1 million in a 401k or an IRA, any of those stupid retirement accounts, half of that, remember, it's W-2 tax law, half of that's going to the government when you take it out. That's why they want you to put money in those accounts, because it's not for you that they care about and they make the laws for, it's for them, because they benefit on those distributions. It's just more W-2 money. Okay, I'm going under the PCH again, and I don't know if I'm gonna be in trouble here with the bike riders, but I'm gonna walk into oncoming traffic. That might be the better solution. So, hey. So that's kind of the nature of it. That's a good start. Now, for me, in terms of financial education, whoops, I don't know what I'm doing. I hope I didn't ruin anything. For me, for financial education, when I graduated SC in 1992, I had $30,000 in student loans, which was a lot of money. And originally my family was going to pay for that, but then they kind of conveniently forgot about the deal, and I paid for it. That's a whole other story. So At the time, I was saddled with $30,000 worth of debt, which doesn't sound like a lot today. Well, it is a lot today. Even if you have $30,000, that's an enormous amount of debt. But for 1992, if I were to convert that into today's dollars, that's the equivalent of $66,000. So today, if I found out overnight that I had $66,000 worth of student loan debt, I would probably have a meltdown, like I did back in 92. And the way I solved that, because I knew nothing about money, nothing, zero. All I knew is you made money, put it in your bank account, and you went to movies, and then you paid your bills and bought some clothing, and occasionally went out with your friends. That's about it. That's the extent of my financial knowledge. So suddenly I had, at 20, I don't know how old I was, 24, 25, something like that, I had this massive financial obligation. And at the time, I think you could still declare bankruptcy and write that money off, which I wasn't going to do. So instead, let's see if I can, what's the better angle here? So instead, I went to Barnes & Noble, and I went to the personal finance section, and I ended up reading 200 books on money. Now, I'm not suggesting that you read 200 books on money. I just did that because I was learning so much and having fun. You can do stuff like that. You can read 200 books on a subject. I'm going to get into reading later on too. If I haven't already bored you to death with this conversation, I will definitely bore you to death with that one. So I ended up reading 200 books on money. I was working in the movie business. Not sure if you know this, but most people don't make any money in the movie business. It's a very low-paying industry for most people. You hear about all the movie stars making millions and millions, and the directors and the creative talent and the studio executives and all that, but that's a very small portion of the overall movie business. Most people are making nothing, and they've only gotten worse. So I wasn't making a lot of money, so how was I going to pay $30,000 on top of all my living costs? I wasn't sure how to do that. So I went to the Barnes & Noble, and I went to the personal finance section, and I just started educating myself for a couple of years, and I read 200 books. More than a couple of years to read 200 books. That was probably about 4 years. I think I was at 50 books a year. And, which is the pace that I'm still reading at, by the way. And I have ever since. So I ended up paying that off in 5 years. Got $30,000. I finally got to zero. And the net result of all of that work was that, because all I wanted to do was pay off that bill that I wanted to pay. I wanted to pay everything off and be at zero as quickly as possible. And when I got there, suddenly I discovered I had all this financial knowledge in my head. I had sort of accidentally given myself a financial education. The kind of education that I wish school gave you, but it doesn't. It doesn't give you that education. But I ended up doing that myself. And since then, I've continued to read books on money. I read them all the time. I can't get enough of them. It's just like an insatiable appetite for me. I will read money book after money book after money book. And I've read, I lost count, but I've read over 500 of them. And I'm going to keep reading them. I'm still reading as voraciously now as I was back then. I like this angle here of the water in the background and the sky. It's really beautiful. We're not quite at sunset yet. You can still see the sun there, but we're getting close. So here's the thing for you. If you've stuck with this video all the way through, if this is even a usable video, and it may not be, but here's the thing. It's really cold out here. I've read over 500 books on this subject, on money. By the way, I suggest you do the same. I suggest you dive into this subject headfirst and read about it for the rest of your life. It's a very worthwhile subject because it's the idea that it's that idea where, you know, money is a good, what is it? How does that go? Money is a good slave, but a terrible master. And one of the reasons you want to get a solid financial education, a real financial education, is because if you don't, what'll happen, no matter how much money you make, is money is going to make you its slave. It will be the master, you will be the slave. And you need to make sure that doesn't happen, because that, you've probably seen that yourself. That happens all the time, and it's not pretty. That's not a pretty place to get to. So you have to stay on top of that and not let money blow you up, because it will. It can. It has that potential. And you want to go on this journey for this reason. If you want to achieve great wealth, great, go for it. Have at it. Man, it's cold out here. And I applaud you. And maybe you'll give some of your wealth that you were inspired to make from watching this video and maybe reading 500 books on money. Maybe you'll help us help fund some of the alumni events I want to put on. And if you do, and if you have the money now, you want to contribute something, please get in touch with me. But if this helps you go in a direction financially that benefits you, and you get to a point where you've replaced yourself as your one and only asset, because if you're making money the W-2 way, then you are your one and only asset. And you have been able to, instead of focus on your income column, and you decide instead to focus on your asset column and building assets, and now those assets are producing enough cash flow to cover all of your living expenses, now you have a choice. Now you've achieved freedom, financial freedom. That's what that is. That's what that means. Now you can go do the things you want to do, and maybe that includes working in jobs that are more meaningful to you. Maybe you have to kind of figure that part out for yourself. It could be you want to travel, go see the world. I just spent 2 weeks in Mexico, in Acapulco. That was awesome. I'd love to go spend a significant amount of time in Mexico and see that whole country, and Central America and South America and lots of other places. I want to go to Australia. There's a town in the middle of Australia, in the middle of the outback. So 1,000 miles in every direction is nothing but emptiness and desert outback. It's called Alice Springs. And it's a modern city in the very center of Australia. And it has, I think it's 40,000 people. They survive on mining and tourism out there. And I'd love to go see that. I also want to go to Port Pubol, which is where Salvador Dali lived and painted all his landscapes. It's a little fishing village that borders France. So there's all these little places that I want to go visit and see, and that are meaningful to me. And they probably aren't meaningful to you. One of them is Shark Bay in Australia, because there is a living colony of stromatolites there. There's another place they found off the coast of Chile, which is, there's another group of stromatolites, but I want to see the stromatolites in Shark Bay in Australia, because those stromatolites are the only reason that you and I are alive right now. It's the only reason that our atmosphere is 80% nitrogen and 20% oxygen. And we thought that those had all died off. We were finding fossils. For 100 years, we looked for a complete stromatolite fossil. We couldn't find one until we discovered that there is a colony of living stromatolites out in Shark Bay in Australia. And no one else would really care about a bunch of rocks out in the shallows in Shark Bay, but to me, I can't think of anything better to go and actually look at those. It's the reason that I'm a living human being right now, and all the life you see around, everything you see around me, all of this is created, all of it, look at it, it goes on forever. All of that is created because of the stromatolites that were here for like 1 billion years. They, whoops, I almost tripped. They produced oxygen, and they converted 100% nitrogen atmosphere into an atmosphere that could support life. And that's why we're here. So I want to go out to Shark Bay, and you can go out to Shark Bay too. If you stop focusing on your income column and instead focus on your asset column and figure out how to build assets. So all you have to do is convert W-2 income as quickly as possible into passive income. And you do that by not looking at your income column. Stop. Instead, concentrate 100% on building something, on building your asset column. And the easiest way to do that is by getting rental properties. So you're gonna have to study rental properties. And you have to figure out what that means and where to go buy them. Because if you're in California, maybe California is not a good place to buy rental properties. Go out of state, get a property manager, have them manage your properties, pay them 10%, it's worth every penny. Remember, in corporate tax law, you got to spend as hard as you can, and then you pay taxes on what's left over. So you want things like a property manager, or you want something like an accountant or an attorney, because that all gets written off, and it's part of spending as hard as you can to help lower your taxes. So you have other incentives at that point when you're using the corporate tax law. Read books about corporate tax law. Tom Wheelwright's great. Read his books. He's awesome. These are all very understandable books as well. So you're not going to be lost even if you don't know the first thing about tax law. So of those 500 books, and you may have already gotten there, I'd say most people have already gotten there. Those who are going to study, give themselves a financial education. But of those 500 books, if you don't want to read 500 books on money, or 100 books on money, or 20 books on money, or 10 books on money, I'm going to talk about reading another time. I'm going to get into that because what I see has happened with most people and their reading habits and the school system is just completely unacceptable. But I'll save that for another day. If you're going to read one book only on money, I would have to say that the best book, the one that most people certainly inspired me the most, that's the one where everything changed, the paradigm shifted for me, and I understood everything I'm talking to you about here for whatever this has been. I've already been talking for an hour. I'm sure most of you I've lost you already. Is Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. If you listen to podcasts on money or wealth building, that book gets brought up about 90% of the time. And I would have to agree with all those people that endorse that book. That's the book that, to me, it finally made sense of all of the other books what they were trying to say. Now, I will give you a corollary, or not a corollary, an addendum to the Rich Dad Poor Dad book. So Kiyosaki's written, I don't even know how many books he's written now. There's in that whole series, because there are all these rich dad advisors and blah, blah, blah things. There's like 40 books total, and they're great. I've read them all, some many times, and you should too. And if you don't read any other books, just read those. That will send you down so many rabbit holes, it'll keep you busy for a lifetime, as it has for me. But if you do read the Rich Dad Poor Dad book, and there's a 25th anniversary edition, read that one. Don't get the original. I mean, get the original one, doesn't matter, but there's the 25th anniversary one is much more robust. But if you do read that book, I would say also read the second book in the series, which is called The Cash Flow Quadrant. The Cash Flow Quadrant, also by Robert Kiyosaki. And that is going to talk about all the tax laws that I tried to lay out here. Hopefully I did it okay. Hopefully you could hear it, even though there was a lot of wind and sand flying around everywhere. So those two books, I would say, read those two books, Rich Dad Poor Dad and The Cash Flow Quadrant by Robert Kiyosaki. That is the best place to start. I had already read a couple hundred books before I got to Kiyosaki back in the 1990s. So I graduated in 92, so I started reading them in 92. I got to that book because I don't think it was written until 97 or something. I think I read that book in 98. And by the way, the Rich Dad Poor Dad book was, it's starting to get dark here. The Rich Dad Poor Dad book, no idea where to put my sunglasses, I'll carry them, was written to sell a game called Cash Flow. And cash flow is sort of like a complicated monopoly. It teaches you accounting, and it teaches you, It's sort of, yeah, it's like a complicated Monopoly. It teaches you accounting. Now that sounds like the most unfun thing you can possibly imagine, but the gameplay is, once you get into it, you're going to find that what you're learning from it is everything I've talked about, but in a much more accelerated fashion. I'm not saying this well. There's no faster way to learn money than to play that game. And you want to play it over and over and over again so that you're getting out of the rat race as quickly as possible, but also so that you get to the point where you're teaching it to other people. Once you get there, then that pattern is now in your head, and that's what's going to make the difference. Because by then you're only going to be focusing on building your asset base, and you're going to be focusing on reaching financial independence or becoming financial freedom, becoming free by playing that game. You can get it on Amazon. I think it's like $80 for the game. It's worth every penny. It used to be $200 when I bought it, and they've since dropped it down. There's also an online version if you really want to do that. You can go to richdad.com. I don't work for that company, by the way. You go to richdad.com, and I think they have the classic version, the first version of the game. They've redone it a couple times, but you can play that for free online. That is not as good of an experience as actually getting your friends together and playing that game. It takes two to 3 hours to play that game, but that's the better experience because there's the gameplay and there's learning the lessons and there's learning how to get out of the rat race, which is analogous to building up your asset column so you have enough passive income coming off of your assets that exceeds your expenses. So you learn all the different ways to do that in the game, but what's the most valuable part of that game and playing it is the conversations that you have with your friends. And that's what you miss out on if you play the game online. But if that's the only way you can get that pattern in your head, by all means do it. Go online and play it that way. But you will miss out on a very valuable portion of what you could get by playing that game in person with your friends. So that's what I would tell you. If you are not interested in reading 500 books on money or 100 books on money or whatever, or giving yourself a lifelong financial education that involves a lot of study of money, something that the school system will never give you, then take a look at the Rich Dad Poor Dad book and then the Cash Flow Quadrant, and either buy the game yourself called Cash Flow and play that over and over again. You can even play alone if you really want to. I've done that before, just trying to figure out how to get out of the rat race over and over. But get to a point where you're teaching others how to play it, or buy the game or find someone that has it. There are a lot of people that have this game around. You can always find someone that has it. I'm sure they'd be happy to teach it to you, because the more you teach somebody a subject, the more you learn it yourself. And when you start playing the cash flow game, people pick up that idea really quickly. So that's it. I think that's all I wanted to talk about on this video. I don't even know if this is a usable video whatsoever. I really just wanted to give you an update on what I was doing with the alumni events I want to put together. And I think I've done that. And I wanted to talk a little bit about money. I didn't think I'd go on for an hour. It tells you that I have to consolidate this topic. Probably down to like 30 minutes. I would say maybe 40 minutes. I want to do a version of this where I have a presentation deck and I have illustrations and I have it laid out a little bit more clearly. But I hope that if money is a subject that you're interested in studying, and I would suggest that it really should be, because it's going to inform absolutely everything you do in life, and it's the piece that school will never teach you. It's certainly, for me, I don't know about you, but for me, going into school, that was my expectation, that by the time I got out of school, I would know everything there was to know about money. And when I got out of school, not only did I know absolutely nothing about money, but I also didn't know anything about the world. And so for me, school was a little bit of a joke. Glad I went to school, had a great time, met a lot of people, made friendships that have lasted decades. And I really enjoyed all of that. But in terms of learning how to live in the world and learning how to navigate financial matters, I didn't get any of that. Nothing. My major was in English literature and writing, and my master's degree also at SC was in motion picture producing. So it was a business course. It was an MFA. It's not an MBA because they didn't have a statistics component. But other than that, it was about how to make movies and how that whole business operates financially, which is its own business model. It has its own sort of specialized kind of business components because it's a creative environment, and where business and creativity collide, there's usually a very specialized business model that tends to take place. So that's what I focused on for my master's degree, and ended up working in the movie business for 30 years. That was a good adventure. I probably didn't need a lot of that information. Well, I take that back, but that master's degree was I probably didn't utilize it as much as they wanted me to, I guess. I don't know what I'm saying. I have to think about that a little bit more, but I could have just went and worked on. We didn't need that education, that particular program. But it was good. And if you're thinking of going into film, consider the Peter Stark program, I guess. For me, I probably should have done something else. Even an MBA would have probably been the more valuable direction to go if I wanted to study business. Or I don't know. I have to think through this a little bit more. But anyway, that's all I wanted to say on this video. I don't forget that there's a reunion going on at Chi-Fi at the SAE house that they're now in on April 8th, I believe. And if you're going to go and you haven't RSVP'd for that, please do so they can get a good count of who's going to show up. And that's it. Again, if you have any questions you'd like me to ask Richie Cole when I interview him, please send those to me. And if you would like to be interviewed, please get in touch with me. We'll get together, and like the Rich Robinson interview that I did, we'll do an interview about you and your life and maybe what you did in Chi-Fi or what Chi-Fi meant to you and all that sort of stuff. And I'd be happy to put it up on this page. So that's it. I'm running out of battery. I hope you're doing well. Have a good week, and get in touch with me if you need anything. Otherwise, I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.